I notice in a lot of what you publish, though, you seem to have a pretty optimistic tilt, which I like. I think anytime you're in this business, you can recognize that bad things will happen. Being an optimist doesn't mean that you're ignoring the bad things. It just recognizes how amazing human society is at creating and making things better, and the emotions that drive it, like greed and wanting more. You had sort of mentioned manufacturing as a spot of bright spot, but I'm kind of curious, what has you optimistic going into 2024 about the economy, about markets in general?
Well, I think if you're honest with yourself and you study the history of the stock market and of the U.S. economy and of U.S. history, quite frankly, it's hard not to be an optimist. For me, it really boils down to the stock market being a call option on human progress. And I know you can't say that about other global markets, but at least in the U.S., this has been true. I mean, yes, we go through crises. Yes, we've been through, I think, 13 economic recessions since the 1950s. 10 or 11 bear markets, countless pullbacks of 10% or more. Yet the S&P is up an average of 8% annually over that period. And there's a reason for that, right? Like life, you run into obstacles, you hit crises, but, like most humans do, we figure out a way to get through it, and we ultimately come out of it stronger. I mean, necessity is the mother of invention, after all. So I think that's really where my optimistic attitude comes from. It's from the numbers telling me that, but also from the fact that, you can't just look at the world in front of you, right? You have to think about where we're going, and you have to realize that there are certain trends and truths that you can kind of lean on day by day. Like, we will hit crises. The economy won't be infallible all the time, but we will find a way to get through that. And most likely that will be reflected in profits, which is ultimately reflected in the stock market. I think about that a lot, especially because, I have friends who I talk to about the stock market, and I almost want to ask them to draw a picture of how it's performed over the past few decades, and I'm sure it would be down and to the right. But if you look at it, it's just up and up and up with these, random blips here and there. So I digress there. But, when I'm thinking about what I'm optimistic about next year, what could drive this bull market? I mean, I think AI is the obvious conversation point here for both, a macro analyst and a micro analyst. NVIDIA was actually one of the few stocks that we saw translate AI into profits last year, or excuse me, not profits yet, sales. Sales definitely, which was really encouraging because, with these young stories, with these themes that we're watching, the big question is, will it actually matter? Is it just all hype, or is this actually going to translate into profits for corporate America and efficiencies for your daily life? And so far for AI, that answer is yes, from what we're seeing. And, going into 2024, I think the AI trade could broaden out into industries that are tangential to AI technology or that benefit from AI technology, but aren't those, big tech companies or semiconductors that we've all been talking about. And you're right, too. Manufacturing, I mean, the reshoring that we've seen, the factory construction spending that we've seen over the past year. I believe factory construction spending was up 60% in either November or December, which is one of the biggest year-over-year gains we've seen on record, which blows my mind because you think about manufacturing, you see that as the old economy, the America that we knew back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, not necessarily now, but it's all coming back because of reshoring and different policy initiatives. And, these are the trends that are happening underneath our feet. This is what will drive portfolios in the years ahead.